Greetings and a very warm welcome to you all. Thank you very much indeed for joining Global Peace Studies for Sustainable Development in Africa, where we discuss pertinent issues of peace and sustainable development around the world and across Africa. I'm George Mutalemwa, moderating this session on behalf of the Africa Peace and Development Network, MAMA. Our theme today is Somalia: hybrid governance, clan leadership, and peace building. Lessons for peace and conflict across Africa. And the speaker is Dr. Farhia Abdi. Dr. Abdi is a researcher, employment specialist, and community program consultant based in Ottawa, Canada. It's a pleasure having you, Farhia, and I'd like to welcome everybody on this call to join me in welcoming Dr. Farhia Abdi. Great, so you may start your presentation.
Thank you, George. Thank you for that warm introduction and your invitation. And thank you for everyone who are joining this presentation. I know we're all calling from different time zones. I know mine is early in the morning and cold. So wherever you're calling from, thank you for joining. I'm going to see if I can share the presentation. Sorry. Okay, let me know when you see it.
Yes, it's there.
Is it the full screen?
Yes, it is.
Good. So, excuse me. So it is, like George said, we're talking about Somalia. And before I get into that, and in the African context, Somalia, don't you think Somalia is one of those troublesome cousins that you try to avoid, but you have to talk to and support because they're family? All kidding aside, so it hasn't always been that way. Somalia in its heydays were one of the leading countries in Africa in all aspects, supporting African independence. And I do remember as a young child in a primary school singing African freedom songs, like Angola and Mozambique and South Africa, even though I had no idea what those countries and those people were as a young child. But it shows that Somalia had a vested interest in seeing free and the freedom and the well-being of African society. And I think right now they have found themselves in a somewhat fragmented situation where they're trying to piece it together. And I'm confident they have the capacity and they will be working on themselves, granted that they are less with their traditional roots. And Africa is working alongside them, encouraging and supporting them, evidenced by the 20 African Union armies that are supporting the country and the government. So that being said, I like to go back to the presentation. This presentation paper is part of it's an under review for a book chapter. And it really came from one of the chapters on my PhD dissertation. which is leadership, which was leadership and governance. So what I did is finding out what type of leadership the clan system Somalia use. I wanted to find out how Somali clan leadership and government work together or not. So on what kind of leadership works for the country. So I put together some diaspora participants in my research from Canada, United States, and UK, because that's where most of Somali diaspora are in these countries. And just so all the generation that worked in civilian government, worked in the military, and do know about the clan system. So to get their perspective of where they think their country should go and what type of leadership may be most suited, and if they can coexist, like this leadership, if they can coexist. So they had a lot to say, and I've learned a lot from that myself. So, and for the purpose of this presentation, then I just took a couple of themes, like Georgia said, and the title indicates that the theme hybrid governance, clan leadership, and peacebuilding. So Somalia has a central case of hybrid governance where customary authority intersect with the formal state structure. And this hybrid system is clan-based power sharing. They use what they call a 4.5 power sharing system, where representation in parliament and other institutions is allocated among the four major families plus the 0.5 for minority group. The hybrid system blends parliamentary, federal, and a clan-based elements. So this model was necessary given the Somalia's social realities, clan dynamics, lack of strong institutions and fragmentation. However, the 4.5 have been challenged, the clan formula. This clan formula underrepresents the minority. So even though it is inclusive, supposedly, it's not fully fair for all groups. And I think the country yields insights highly pertinent to African peace and conflict. So let me just go to the next slide. So why Somalia matters for peace and conflict. Somalia has a clan leadership that plays a central role in Somalia's conflict and dynamics in peacemaking. Their traditional justice and conflict resolution practices remain core to local peacebuilding, and examining them reveals what informal system can either do to support or undermine national stability. So Somalia is a crucial case where state institutions have historically been weak and fragmented, and clan structure often fills governance gaps, making them indispensable to any peace effort. It's not always the case, of course, because in many instances, an attempt to modernization has replaced clan leadership. And Somalia's political landscape is deeply intertwined with clan identities. So unlike many other fragile states, clan are not peripheral in Somalia. Excuse me, they are central actors shaping violence and negotiations and reconciliation. So this makes, in an essence, the case essential case by understanding how informal system plays in peace building. And it is one of my research, if I expand a little bit on that, is that when I was talking to these participants, they talked about the clan and the role of clan. And and then the identity it holds for them. And one of the reasons that they so highly spoke about, the system was their way of dealing with conflict and peacemaking. So how is it relevant to African peace and conflict? So it is relevant because investigating indigenous conflict resolution mechanism used by Somali clans is it's important because, as many of you I'm sure are aware, Somalia has gone through civil strife and still recovering from that. And some of the stabilizing forces were that having foundation in clan system that had keep the country in a way, in some parts more so than others, to have some sort of a function. So it sheds light on grassroots legitimacy and community level governance, because without functioning government, they manage to stay afloat. And so it does, by learning it, it does contribute the general African theme when we're looking at the post-conflict reconstruction, when we're looking at governance and legitimacy and leadership in fragile states, which all of those apply to Somalia, and they seem to manage somewhat. So, and many African societies rely, of course, on a customary system for dispute resolution and leadership, and using Somali experience helps illuminate how these systems contribute to peace and or fuel conflicts. And in this case, it can provide lenses to understand similar dynamics in Sudan, which is currently going through a lot, South Sudan, Ethiopia, northern Kenya, and beyond. Mind you, not all conflicts are related to clan conflict. It's more, it's related to resources. Some are related to religion. Some are related to ideologies. But what at the end it comes down to, for those who have traditional foundations, that's, it sort of supports to de-escalate or to find a resolution for those conflicts. So Somalia, when I did the research and I asked participants to talk about the traditional clan authority and the formal state institutions, their thinking was more, like I said earlier, they like the traditional authority. And they saw it as a power that can stabilize society. And on one of the Somalia central problem is that dual power structure between clan elderly and formal government elderlies. I'm sorry, excuse me, it's early in the morning. Elderlies hold significant legitimacy while state struggle with capacity and trust. And traditional leaders are respected in many Somali communities, hence why the participants were had a strong feeling about the system. So incorporating them into legitimacy gives legitimacy to the system, especially in places where formal institutions might be weak. Navigating this tension is essential to understanding Somalia's prolonged fragility. I said earlier that sometimes trying to rush into modernizing governance, some states tend to forget that the traditional tools that are available to them are really what will make them successful. But that's not always the case. There's this tension that some sort of a power struggle that happens, and then it provides insight into post-conflict governance challenges and struggles for inclusive leadership. So Somalia is obviously a poster child for such conflicts and resolutions as well. And I'm sure that applies to many other fragile states or states that have a similar system. So clan elders are the first responders to conflict, and their ability to negotiate ceasefire, manage revenge killings, mediate resource dispute is invaluable. But their impact depends on whether their authority is integrated or in conflict with state structure. So the clan leaders possess, of course, a deep-rooted social capital and mediation authority. The capacity building for these leaders can enhance political stability. Bringing clan system with state institutions crucial for resolving long-standing divisions, because the clan leaders, our traditional leaders, really hold all the constituencies. So if any government wants to run a government, run society, they do need to have that buy-in. They need to have these leaders who are representative of their own people be part of that, governing, not necessarily governing in a sense of taking the lead, but in a hybrid system where Somalia has that clan power sharing, it's important. In fact, Somaliland, which is an autonomous region, northwest Somalia, does have chosen to create a hybrid system. And that hybrid system, unlike the Botswana house chiefs, they do have a power. They review, they object legislations from the lower house, and they also advise the government for cultural issues, where in Botswana, they are only advisory chiefs. And my research for my participants actually preferred that. They preferred the advisory committee because there's a dichotomy of what they're expressing, because what they wanted was, what they shared was that they liked the leadership of clan system, and they wanted that leadership to be modeled in the national leadership. But they do not want the clan leaders to be involved in the national legislation or national dealings, because they don't think they're suited for that. They think their clan leaders supposed to be on their own environment, their own habitat, where they deal with conflicts, and they cannot be, in their eyes, they're going to be biased, obviously, because they will speak for their own clan circle. So they like to see the government getting advice, learning from the clan leadership, and then including them in, what's happening in the country, but not necessarily sharing it on the stage with them. So, so it does. They do have that capacity to create, build peace, and any government should be able to tap into that and make it as a support system for them. Because when I was talking about the relevance to Africa, if you're talking about post-conflict construction and governance legitimacy and leadership in fragile states, that is what it's all about. Because these leaders, traditional leaders, know how to make a peace. Their whole entire life has been that, and in particular Somalia, which is constantly had clan conflicts, and they have practiced that. They know how to make to have that kind of capacity, that kind of leadership, to build, to create peace and reduce conflict, even though they can be part of the conflict when things go south. Because in the civil strife in Somalia, of course, some elites took advantage of the loyalty of clan members and used it to their own advantage to steer, trouble and create animosity between neighbors, and just purely for their own purpose. So it can have that negative aspect of it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to that original root of the clan itself, the clan system. And then that picture that you see right there, that is how, the leaders meet. They sit down. I'm sure it's familiar to most African communities. Sit down and talk about the issue and address everything. They do not leave stone unturned. They will have that. Everyone have to say their say. Everyone have to say what they need to say, and everyone would listen, respect that, and then nobody will leave without having any resolution for that. So that is an African way of solving conflict. Let's sit down, let's talk about it. Nobody's leaving. There's no, the loudest person, will get the attention, or narcissist, the person will have the attention. No, it's more a community discussion, a dialogue, and then they will construct a solution at the end. Now, the clan structure, gender inclusivity, and the rights is very tricky. Clan institutions remain obviously patriarchal, and they often exclude women and minorities. So Somali clan system remains an influential force in social and political lives, but its exclusionary nature often prevents equal participation and doesn't consistently align with contemporary human rights principles. So women rarely participate directly in elderly councils, and minority groups face structural marginalization. So any hybrid model must address these inequalities to avoid reproducing old injustices, embedding elderly in governance can stabilize Somalia, can address these inequalities and avoid reproducing all the injuries, and embedding elderly in governance can stabilize, but only if paired with checks that ensure representation and rights protection. Women is very Somalia. I personally had involved in issues of gender equity and participation, and my best friend who passed away, and I have worked on that topic for a while, and managed to have at least a discussion of women participating in political system. And when Somalia was drafting its own new constitution, we wanted to see that in there, and allocate women a percentage. So, if I'm not mistaken, this now they are, I think, 24%, and parliamentarians. So it's a bit of a success because it's gaining ground, and where before it wasn't. So any system that is going to be governing has to keep that in mind, and have to make sure that women has a place in that on the table and participate in the governing of the country. So the challenge on implementing hybrid governance in Somalia. The hybrid governance is complicated by overlapping mandates and rivalries. Elderly often clash with politicians, especially during elections where clan influence is instrumentalized. Additionally, what works in Puntland, for example, Somaliland might not work in Jubaland or Hirshabelle due to clan diversity. So the power struggle between these entities is understandable, because this is every 4 years. The elderly have to select parliamentarians and to send, because Somalia is presidential governing, parliamentarian governing. So parliamentarians selected the president, and he selected his cabinets. But in the hybrid system, the challenge is jurisdictional ambiguity in justice, security, and resource disputes, and there's a risk of legitimizing undemocratic or clan-based favoritism, and there's a high variation across subclan and regions. So like I said, every 4 years, whenever the election comes, the government talks about getting rid of the hybrid system, because in the Somali, the draft constitution says that in the federalism that they have to have one person, one vote, one person elections. But feasibility of that is, to me, somewhat challenging. So every time that the election comes close, whoever is the head of the country talks about getting rid of that and trying to, I want to do the one person, one vote last minute. So it is a struggle, and it's a tense times where everyone tries to position themselves in a way that they can usurp power. So that's the challenge for that, having the struggle to do that. So when it is an election time, when you have stability in the country and security, then, and there is a space for an actual election, then yes, I think that might be removed, but not necessarily removed in the sense that you're not going to be talking to the traditional leaders, but that has to be still part of in any government. So the policy implications for Somalia. So policy interventions in Somalia need to be collaborative and formally rooted in local realities where the state cannot ignore and sidestep clan structures. It must also ensure they do not overshadow efforts to build inclusive governance. Hybrid governance should serve as a pathway towards stronger, more accountable institutions rather than entrenching Somalia in perpetual informality. So, co-designing government framework with clan, civil society, and government will be a great way to have it define clear interfaces between state and clan authorities, especially in justice and security, because clan system and traditional system have their own justice and security. Monitor for inclusive across clans, gender, and minorities. And so now the permanent substitute for state building, but it's a transitional strategy. So, and that's what my students were talking about in my research, that they were saying that they don't mind what's built right now, as long as it is temporary and a permanent fix, but they also wanted to make sure that moving forward, that they see advisory potential for clan leaders, traditional leaders. So, in Somali case illustrates both potential and the risk of hybrid governance. When effectively designed, it can foster peace and draws growing legitimacy in clan structures. When mismanaged, it reinforces division, weakness, state building efforts. But the core challenge is to craft a model that respects some institutions without weakening or fragmentation. So formal institutions cannot function without community input, and yet clan system alone cannot provide the right-based governance. The study's contribution lies in showing how these two logics operate in parallel and how their interaction shape governance outcome. So I'm hoping that there will be a way where they can all work together and have a system that is suitable for the country. So I think it was as brief as George asked, but hopefully this have been helpful. So I'm gonna leave it here and have time for people to have a discussion about this. So George, I'm gonna send it back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed, Farhia, for this wonderful presentation, and that you touched upon this hybrid governance, clan leadership, and peace building. And I'm sure there are lessons that we are all learning from Somalia, from your presentation today. So thank you so much. And as you put it, you know, that Somalia was not always the same as it is today because of, you know, the state fragility. And, but you've mentioned that there are sources of conflict, definitely resources, religion, ideologies, but especially the challenge in this hybrid governance, the tensions between traditional clan authority and former state institutions. And then you're saying clan institutions are mainly patriarchal. And so these two ways of or systems of governance, I think we need to reflect upon them together. And I can see also some questions already in chat. So I would like to ask people for questions, comments, and I'm sure that Farhia will be happy to respond to those. Let's start with Jim. You're welcome, Jim. Your microphone is muted, Jim. Jim, your microphone is muted. Can you unmute it, please? Yes. We can't hear you, Jim. It seems that you need to turn on your audio. So anyway, when you are ready, yes,
can you
please
hear
go
me now,
ahead.
Doc?
Yes, we can.
Yes, good afternoon to you all.
Afternoon.
Yeah, I wanted to start by saying conflict is inevitable in different societies, and as well that it's really hard to define conflict, to define peace, because peace is not only the absence of war. So, in this case of Somalia, I would want to focus on the issues of rights, that rights have to be considered, especially when the state or government is promulgating its laws. I'm of the opinion that there is need to consult clan authorities rather than sidelining them, so that they can come with a policy that addresses all, especially in terms of inclusivity. Community engagement is very crucial in advancing peace and development. So I think the clan authorities have to be consulted as many times as the law is being promulgated. I thank you. Those are my humble submission.
Yes, yes, I agree 100%, Jim. It's important that government consults with the other authorities, which are the traditional leaders. So it is, I agree 100%. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. I see a question from Evelyn. Evelyn, are you able to speak? Probably.
Yes, I can speak.
Okay.
The mask is
Yeah.
because my husband has a flu.
Oh, I see. Sorry about that. I hope he gets soon better soon.
Here, first of all, I'm a fellow Ottawa resident. So we should get together sometime.
Definitely.
Yeah. My question, I was struck when you said that one of the arguments against the clan leadership being included at the governance level was because they would be biased in favor of their community. And would not the parliamentarian also be biased in favor of their constituents? So I wonder if you could elaborate on that.
It's a wonderful question, and nice to meet you, Evelyn. And hopefully when you come back, are you in Ottawa now or you're outside?
I'm in Ottawa, and we both are looking out on snow.
Yeah. Yes, we should meet for a coffee. I do agree, and that is the other thing. I think parliamentarians are expected to ascend by the clans, and the clan, it's in their constituents, and they're like right here in Canada right now. Parliamentarians come from Saskatchewan, they come from Alberta, they come from, so they always speak for the benefit for their own constituency. So that's no different. They will be speaking what is better, but generally they will be managing the affairs of the country, right? But then any policies that come out, it has to be something that will benefit their own community. But what the participants were saying was that the national, because they were making distinction between clan role and a national government role. So they were saying that the clan role can be suited. It is suited for the clan environment because it's circular, it's it's related to issues, particularly for their clans and their neighbors, and but the national stage is a different environment where the government deals with international communities. They think of the national interest of the country. So they're trying to make that distinction. They don't want it to be, and I guess selfishly, they don't want their own clan leaders thinking of, forgetting them, right? So it is, I think that's what they are trying to say. But I see I see the question that there is that parallel issue of who is, suited if more. Thank you. And I hope your husband as well.
Thank you so much. Richard, you're welcome, Richard.
Thank you so much. I also see that I also see the same thing, that clan always deal with the issues around their regions, but them entering into state institutions to deal with issues with other, it will be difficult. So I don't think they can. They should be allowed to. Okay, I don't know, but I see it to be difficult. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's what the participants were feeling, that they were saying that, I don't feel comfortable having my clan leader or my traditional leader to be in a national stage, and because their capacity, their role and their capacity is just for clan and conflict. And in a way, I think they're thinking that they might lose that, what makes them important, what makes them valuable, right?
All right. Jim?
Thank you.
Good afternoon once again, Doc and the panel.
Good afternoon.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I also want to stress the points of citizens' rights, that of clan rights, human rights. That what sometimes causes conflict to keep on erupting is that, let's take, for example, Article 14 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. It is actually clear that it says that the rights are not exhausted but by what is enumerated in the legislation. That is to say, there is a legislation in Somalia. So in other words, the rights should not be exhausted by what is enumerated in the Somalian legislation. Therefore, what is really enumerated in their legislation is just a bare minimum. So those clan leaders, when they are involved in policy making, they have to know that rights may be added provided that they share the essential characteristics of what is enumerated in the legislation, so that they can have policies and regulations as well as legislation that actually incorporates everyone rather than marginalizing structures or level of people in the communities. That is another information that I wanted to add. Then last but not least, I'm also requesting Dr. Farhia Abdi's email Those are my submissions.
Okay. I'll give it to George. I think George has it, so he can share that with you.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But Jim, thank you. That's true. I mean, remember, these traditional leaders have been there centuries, right? It's a custom that is rich and has been there forever. So it will take a while for them to see the ways of the world today. And they're not, I think I might have seen a question flashed on the screen that parliamentarian, had they been elected in parliamentarians? No, the clan leaders are not elected in parliamentarians. They send a representative from their own clans for the time being, at least in the way that its system is structured. And in the hybrid system, though, as I talked about in Somaliland, they are in their upper house. So they technically part of the government. But there's no, generally in Somalia, there's no elected leaders, clan leaders.
All right. There is also a question from Sebastian. Sebastian, are you able to ask that question directly to us?
Yes. Unfortunately, my network, I can't trust my network if I put on the video.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Yes. Thank you so much, and good afternoon to everyone. Farhia, I think that was fantastic presentation and good job for that matter. I've been interested in the issues of the Horn of Africa, even though I am West Africa based. On the aspect of governance, so one of the suggestions I read from your presentation is your concern about Somalia as a state going beyond the existing hybrid governance system to adopt or to build something which is quite permanent. And I think the direction is towards the Western model of a state. So I'm wondering how permanent governance would mean beyond what we observe today for the people of Somalia, and whether, based on your research, it is possible to adopt the Somali model of the African state. Because for the past decades, the African state has been nothing beyond what others would describe as weak. Others have talked about hybridity, but we see the challenges with both the description of the African state as weak or hybrid or whatever adjectives that have been ascribed to. So do you think that the Somali state, or there is something in Somalia that can present itself as a model African state?
Right. Well, I'm not sure, Sebastian, if you mean like what they are doing right now as a hybrid system, or
Yes,
what they're planning to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So does Somalia present a model case for Africans to emulate, particularly within this context of multipolar system, where the typical Western model has failed Africa?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, the hybrid model is sufficient and temporarily, and Somalia. I mean, in the case of Somalia, at the moment, that hybrid came out of necessity at the beginning, because they had many peace conferences and really couldn't agree anything. And at the end, they came up with this idea is because at the time warlords were roaming the country and everything was out of control. So they figured sharing power will be the best way to stabilize the country. So, and that was like a couple of decades ago. So then now it is sort of became part of the system. and it worked and working in terms of having that inclusion, though it's not always an ongoing thing. Like I was saying, when elections come is when, you know, these merge come to play. So in a temporary setting, in a to stabilize a country, I think it's a great model. And I think, to, like I was saying about the challenges, is to make sure there's no any ambiguity of who is role is what, like who controls the security, who controls the international affairs. So those will be an issue. So it needs to be tailored to each country's system, tribal system or clan system or advisory, whatever we want to call it. Like it's working fine for Botswana, which is a good example. And Somaliland, as I said, also part of, region is still also working fine for them. The long-term impact, I think that to be determined. But as a temporary solution with the countries that are going through conflicts, I think it's suitable. I hope that answers, Sebastian.
Yeah, thank you so much, Farhia. There is also a question here from Donna. I'm not sure whether you are able to speak, but you may try. The question is anybody investigating the Nigerian model for interaction of the national government and the subnational kingdoms? It may be applicable in Somalia. So if anybody is investigating the Nigerian model, please let us know, and we will discuss that.
I haven't, so yeah.
All right. Maybe if you could just give us a brief history, maybe into the conflict, and that really led, like, what was the cause of the conflicts that we've kind of witnessed for many, for a long time in Somalia. Just a brief synopsis of that.
Yeah, well, the conflict happened because Somalia was under a dictatorial system, a military system that came to power by coup. Somalia was one of those the few countries in Africa that were unscathed on having colonial diminished their culture. So they had that, and they have worked to build their identity in their own country, and had a civilian government, a democracy government, and then the president died, and then the military leader took over. Mohammed Ziad Barre is his name. So he did well at the beginning, trying to keep the country afloat, because he, all dictators always do well for the first few years until the power goes in their head. But so he did put together the country. At the time continued, but he destroyed everything that was democratic, and then he started to internalize a warfare within the country, and try to kill his own people, and people uprising through him. But the problem with dictatorial system is that there is no backup plan, right? They remain there and until they either being killed, they're kicked out, or they die, and someone else in his orbit will take over. So in this case, when he died, when he kicked out, the country found itself leaderless. And then people, the warlords who were fighting with this dictator had took over, and they couldn't agree. And I think the biggest mistake they made then was that when the government fell, they dismantled the army. So then army became militias. Or you can go to your own people. So instead of keeping the army and trying to find solution, they dismantled it. And then the army, warlord leaders called their own army and took their weapons with them, calling their military people to say, well, you're part of my clan, so bring whatever you have, just to simplify it. But that's how that came to be. And then they were fighting over power and eventually tried to create peace. And thanks to the African neighbors who got involved, Kenya, Djibouti, Ethiopia, all of them were trying to find a solution for this anarchy. So they created some temporary presidency. But after all the peace process they've gone through, they finally came to settle with this hybrid system where clan power sharing is to be. So that's where they are now. But they're still struggling to to come up with a real sustainable plan and either ratify the Constitution. But every president who comes wants to have his own stamp, and some of them have the memory of central government where people are not with them because it's a federal system. And now that regions are functioning on their own, nobody wants to go back to the dictatorial system because they made that connection. Central government means dictatorship, right? Because they still have the scars of the Civil War, and they haven't really had a deep reconciliation about that.
Thank you so much, Farhia, for that explanation. And so, yes, this is the Global Peace Studies for Sustainable Development in Africa. And I'm looking for more hands, more questions. And because I think what is regarding Somalia has resonance somewhere else in the continent, and therefore there are lots of things we can learn from each other. Yes, Chip, you're welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. Pardon my deep ignorance about Somalia, but I'm curious about just us beginning understanding perhaps of the four clans, who they are. And then what intrigued me was the 0.5. So maybe in the 4.5, the 0.5 is the minority, and I'm just curious about them. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for bringing that up because that's a bit of a contentious issue. The 0.5 is when they were planning these, they figured the four majority clans should get a lion's share of what's happening, and then the minorities should be getting something, but not as well as the majority. So even with that supposedly inclusive system where they saw it as a reality, well, the minority and majority, there's a difference. Where they saw that, it's not a fair system because within clans, there are minorities, sub-clans, minorities, and then they don't get their share allocated share for them. because the minor majority usurps, and for the ones they get is not, it doesn't give them much of a voice. So the minority, rightly so, complains about that, and the plan is to erase this 4.5 and make it more equal.
Yeah, thank you so much, Farhia. Jim?
Thank you, Doc, and the panel. Let me also start by asking that, am I audible? Because I think there is a challenge in network here in Zimbabwe.
We hear you loud and clear.
Yeah.
You can hear me loud and clear. Thank you. Yes. Right. The other issue that I wanted to raise, since I'm still babbling with ideas, there is also an issue of social contract that researchers or policymakers should hold the government accountable, especially in terms of social contract, because there must be a social contract between the government and the people of Somalia, whereby the people should call, or the clans should call for action, that those policymakers should reach to the offices of the top officials so that they can have a dialogue, sit down, and let their voices be heard. So that the issues of conflict can be addressed as a matter of urgency. I think those are my submissions for the meantime. Thank you.
That's a good idea, Jim. Yeah, social contract is important, but when there is a fair system that works. Yeah.
Right. And if you look at the situation now, maybe you would like to give us, a reason for hope that things will be better in Somalia, because actually I believe that if, there is peace in one country, actually, that's going to, lead to peace actually in other neighboring countries and for the entire continent. And so if you could give us your take on this, how do you see Somalia moving towards peace?
Well, Somalia, I consider them really very resilient people and capable, have the capacity, I should say, to improve their situation. And I was saying at the beginning that for them to really go back to their own traditional roots and coalescing with that and trying to bring that, make that muscle work, that will help for them to go back and start from ground up to build some of the regions in the country, like Somaliland and Puntland, are two autonomous. Somaliland, of course, wants to succeed the country because they said they had enough of this mess. But both of them in Puntland are the north regions, east and west of the country, and they have a deep-rooted clan system. It's the only place where the actual traditional leaders act, and it's the reasons why people say that they are stable, because there's that respect for the traditional leaders. So if the whole country is, can create that kind of system, I think, and start bringing people together and having an actual reconciliation will be, I see them having a future back into to their African family as they were. So, but right now they need to figure that out. They're trying, but I think they're not there yet. But they will be. That's my conclusion. They will be.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Farhia. We are looking for more questions and comments. And thank you so much for your...
George, I must say that I love that we have a network, an African and Friends network, where people can exchange information freely and knowledge. And I'm really, really proud of this network and happy to be part of it. And you are doing an amazing job, by the way, for connecting everybody, your emails and your information. So thank you for keeping us all together.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's a pleasure. And, I didn't actually mention this, but Farhia is one of the members of the network, the Africa Peace and Development Network, MAMA. We have a WhatsApp group, and anybody actually, you are invited to join us, and we can continue our conversations there, as we do also online via Zoom every Wednesday. So yes, it's great that you join us, and we look forward to more interaction with everybody, because we can learn a lot from each other if we are connected, and so we keep our communication lines open. So we still have some 20 minutes, and so you are invited to ask questions or make comments on this great theme, hybrid governance and clan leadership, peace building in Somalia, in Africa. Yes, Helen, you are welcome.
Thank you. This has raised a lot of interesting questions, but one major issue that sadly often arises with any form of government is how you stop corruption. Can I ask the speaker how corruption is kept under control in the traditional system and in the modern system or the national system?
Thank you, Helen. The corruption is a huge crisis all over the world, for sure. And one of the ways will be to have an accountability system where leaders are accountable for their roles, for their actions. And most of the time, corruption thrives when there's no transparency, when there's no accountability. And I think in countries where there's no system in place, it becomes prevalent. And I think Somalia is one of them, corruption thrives there as well. And then that will be the only way traditional system deals with issues. Normally, corruption is not in their vocabulary, even though nowadays, with them involved in politics, they might have been dragged into it. But it's a prevalent issue all over the world. And I think those are the two ways that can be prevented, is to have a system of transparency and a system of accountability.
Sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Thank you, Doc. Yeah, I also wanted to add one or two things on the issues on how corruption can also be kept out. One thing for sure that we have to bear in our minds is that corruption is like a cancer disease nowadays. Uh, it's almost everywhere. So what we are just saying, we should, as communities, we should come up with mechanisms whereby uh, each and every individual should be held accountable in terms of issues pertaining corruption, despite the fact of holding leaders accountable. Because corruption can be done everywhere. So it's like we have to say it out. Let's come up with even institutions within the communities. Let's start even from grassroots so that our voices will be heard everywhere, that there is a certain issue pertaining corruption in such an area. So the moment that we unpack, for example, institutions that corruption is being happening, then it makes it easier for a corruption to be reduced, because it's easier to reduce it than to end it entirely. So we are just encouraging and urging each other that let's come up with mechanisms or even in commissions within the communities, within our grassroots, whereby we campaign for corruption. Because remember, each and every person has got the right to freedom of expression. So that right has to be aimed out so that we can reduce corruption. So it takes two to tango. It's a shared responsibility for everyone or for every community to engage each other in corruption awareness campaigns so that corruption can be reduced to its entirety. Those are my submissions. Thank you.
Good idea. Yes, I think education is important, and I think it should start from, part of the education system. Young people should be taught how to, be to have an accountable system, to be part of the solution. And I think it's crucial that young generations are taught how to not be corrupted when they grow up. In Africa, what is the average presidents in Africa is, I believe, 65. And Africa's medium age for youth, which is the most young continent, is 19 to 20. And you can see the gap age-wise. You can see the gap. And then what that means is that these older generation who are ruling the countries or running the countries have a different system that littered with, obviously, some of them corruptions, and they're not a good role model for the young generation. So having the grassroots, like you said, Jim, creating this kind of systems where the corruption is talked about is a good idea, because young generation, one thing they are, they're very aware of social issues. Millennials, Gen Zs, they're aware of social issues, environmental issues, where the older generations, those are not really a priority for them. So there is, I see a huge conflict between these generation coming up and the old generation that is seem to be trying to maintain power, unless they change their leadership style, unless they reach out to the young generation and have a dialogue with them and try to somewhat construct a system that cater to them. I think it is going to be an issue. It's huge. huge issue. And you can already see some of the countries that young people who are rising up to protest corruption and disagree with their elderly leaders.
It does
So
seem
that's a
that
good
corruption
point.
is a method of holding on to power. We had a question in the chat from Daniel. Daniel, would you like to ask it, or I could read it from the chat? Daniel Manyasi. He writes, a meaningful engagement. I wonder what Farhia's take on the larger Somalia, those in Kenya and Ethiopia, and the dream of a larger compact Somali nation.
Interesting question. Well, I'm not sure. That is, Somalia has always had a dream of having all its people as one. But I think Somali Kenyans and Somali Ethiopians, that's what they are. Somali Kenyans and Somali Ethiopians. So I don't see that issue relegated again. So I don't think so.
And Khadija too.
I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Can you hear me, please?
Yes, very well. Give us your question or remark.
Yes, my question and contribution is, we are talking about accountability and the response to governance in our community, in our country, and the nation, and the world at large. Now, the government have a responsibility to protect each citizen, and each citizen has a responsibility to obey the law and go by the rules and regulations. But in our setting, more especially in the Africa setting, we find out that those that go against the law violate the rights of the masses. Instead of investigating them, they rather protect them, elevate them, begin to show them in public. And if they continue doing things like this, or our children, our generation next to us, or even us, we the young people that are coming up, looking up to the elders, then the government is behaving in this matter, there will be no change. Because if you want to see a change in the home, the change starts with the dad, the mom, the children, and so forth. But if the dad or the mom cannot set a good precedent in the home, to find a change, it might be difficult. So in this light, instead of they bring the people who are responsible of committing crime or going against the rights of human, more especially the vulnerable people that don't have voice, because like in our setting, the law only works for those who are connected. You might be connected politically or you are financially capable. But if you are not politically connected, you are not financially capable, even if they serve you the right, the legal right that this is the law, and the government has the responsibility to implement the law, they will not implement the law because they are protecting those that are in their cabal, in their clique, that are committing this offense, that by doing that, if we prosecute this person or bring this person to book, we will lose our votes, or I will lose my reputation, or I will lose my friendship. So instead of protecting the nation, the people, the masses, they prefer to protect their self and protect their interests and their friendship. So in this light, I don't know which measure can we take to see that we have a change or we make a change, because a lot of people are pushing and there is a lot of hard work. And irrespective of whatever we are doing, when you go to school the first semester, you expect that you bring out results, and these results must be valid for your hard work. But even though every Wednesday we are coming here listening to different speakers, we are learning, and most of us, we are trying to implement it. But even in this implementation, we are not, like for me, the change that we are seeing is too low. Instead of seeing 50 or 60% of changes, we are just seeing 5%. Even today, I do a write-up on Facebook. There's a recent judgment that the government is supposed to honor. But one of these individuals that perpetrate this violence against the rights of the masses in the country, instead of the government to investigate this individual, in fact, the government and the First Lady are now celebrating this particular person, taking her to public events and ignoring the ruling and the international courts, the judgment that has been passed by the international court. So in this light, I'm just pleading, and I want to know more. If there is any other way we can look at, or we need to change the directive, or we just need another approach, or I don't know. I really want to know. Thank you so much, sir. Everyone.
Thank you, Khadija. This is exactly what I was talking about. That I'm assuming you're part of the young generation, and by the way you're expressing your feelings, and that's what young people are feeling. They feeling that they see on the world stage of their own country that things are not working for them. There's no jobs. There's no social services. And they see people, older leaders who are showing off some wealth that doesn't translate to them. So it is a dilemma, and I think it's a dilemma for these leaders who need to be very careful about what they're showing and creating, because Africa has a majority of young people. And I think the sooner they wake up to realize that that this generation needs to be brought up, that they need to be participating, they're the future of the continent, the better for them and for their countries. But most of the time, or at least right now, they seem to be failing. So I'm hoping they will realize the type of leadership that is required to keep their countries afloat and bring the young people into, because a lot of young people have been educated in their countries and are staying home because there's no jobs, you have to give people hope. So I feel that your sentiment, and you are on the right to feel the way you are feeling, because you're not alone in that, because your generation are feeling it all over the continent. So
I would add that in my country, the United States, it's very similar. The young people see exactly what you see. So don't stop. Don't stop raising your voice.
Yes. Don't stop believing, and don't lose hope, because it is the more you make that noise, the more you speak out, the more you demand accountability, the better for the generation to stand up or stand out. And these leaders hopefully will listen.
Dr. George, you're back. We'll return the baton.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Peter, for the moderation and excellent conversation. Clive, you're welcome.
Thank you, George. Sorry I was late. I've been busy. And unfortunately, I missed Farhia's full presentation, but I've caught up on the Q&A. Kajit Jatu was asking, what is the alternative? And I would, as I tried to explain on the 5th of November, we're in the middle of a transition, and these institutions that we've relied on for so long, government, corporations, NGOs, religion, etc., they've effectively been colonized or working against us. And there is a structural change where these institutions will cease to play a part, in effect. This is quite a big story, but one of the things that Kajijatu said was about the government is there to protect you and you obey the laws. Well, if you analyze the way in which we organize ourselves, it's basically down to money, the introduction of money. And there's a writer, thinker called Kojin Karatani, who's written this book, The Structure of World History. And he talks about Marx and his analysis. But although Marx talked about the modes of exchange, he didn't address them, whereas Karatani does. And he talks about 4 modes of exchange, the first being the sort of gift economy, which is characterized in a lot of pre-literate societies. Then you get to the mode B, which is protect and control effectively. So this is where an institution or a king or hierarchy of some sort promises to protect you, and in exchange you pay taxes, obey laws, etc. But as soon as that happens, then the motivation of those people in control changes because they benefit from the system and therefore they extract more and more from the rest of the people. You then get into the sort of capital exchange, which is effectively banking, which is then turns the whole thing into something of a casino. And I won't go into the idiosyncrasies and detail of that. But what Karatani talks is about something transient, which is along the lines of what I was trying to explain on the 5th of November. But essentially, we're going to move beyond the current modes of exchange to something analogous to the gift economy, but without the idea of direct reciprocation. And the easiest example I can explain as to why this is happening structurally is if you take something like YouTube, people create content, whether it be tips on how to work a particular item or psychology or self-help in so many ways. There are so many people putting out content, not with a direct agreement to have some form of reward, but by putting it out there, their solution to people's problems becomes socialized. And although YouTube or Google or whoever it may be capitalize and basically take most of the reward for this, there is some reward coming. All we have to do now is open source that process. And we are then in a position where everybody is autonomous, codependent, and we're in a self-organizing family of the global population, the number of which I'm never certain of. I'm not sure that I believe 8 billion, but who knows?
I don't believe 8 billion either. So it's self-fulfilling sort of societies where people do what they need to do. And I think the gap between wealth, the rich and poor are ever increasing in our world. And I think few people have the most wealth and in the globe. So that kind of inequality is it's what drives most of corruptions as well. So I think your points are well taken, Cliff. It is true that we are going through some a world where we become commodity, right? To some. So, yeah, I do agree some of those points, of course, and we need to make sure that, at least in Africa, that they are paying attention, and like Khadija was saying, that they are paying attention to their resources, they're paying attention to their youth, they're paying attention to their system, and how they want to be contributing continent in the global setting.
All right, thank you so much. And Richard, and then Jim.
Thank you. I also have a short contribution to make. With the issue of leaders failing, or leaders failing us, I believe if we assume that the leaders are like all know all, leaders like God, when you are given a post, when you're given a huge office, you assume the character of God. Therefore, whatever you do should be accurate. Then we may be mistaken. That's why when we have a country, or what is an organization gets a little problem, then it causes us all. They are just like us. In fact, when you assume a leadership role, you are just like when you were not given the nod. You see, so your ability as a leader, your ability to manage for those behind you or those following you to have that sort of freedom. That ability, if you don't have that ability, it will be difficult to make people happy. So I want us to take this notion that leaders are not all know all. See, they are also being paid, just as we are all being paid. So that thinking about them too much may be a bit lesson. Thank you.
Yeah. Richard, power is addictive, right? It's very addictive, and if you don't have a check and balances,
Yes.
they tend to stay, as we see some countries, longer than they should, because there's nothing stopping them, and the power is very addictive. It's addictive in our societies, in the Western world, everywhere. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Any leader who runs for a position, who becomes a leader, would like to maintain that power if possible. But the difference is some societies have constructed their own rules, the laws, and there is an accountability. There is a term for them. There is, people. Right now, I'm in Canada, and I have the province, part of Canada called Alberta. The ruling parties, MPs have been called. I mean, you can, if you're dissatisfied with your own MB, you can recall them. So they are like almost 14 of them have been asked, put to, on the process of recalling. So that's an accountability. So leaders don't come in to think that they're going to be God to people. They're going to be, going to be there forever. They come in to earn people's vote, and by asking that is to show what they can do for that community who sent them. So it is very addictive, but you have to have a check and balances in place.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Jim will be the last person to speak now, because of the time constraint. Jim.
Thank you very much, Doc, and the panel. Let me start by saying my view and my respect submission on the issue of law that have been previously raised by Kadijato. I think I've mentioned your name correctly. If I didn't, please just bear with me. My submission then is that let's conscientize our communities as we have alluded from the grassroots. Let's engage these youngsters and others, especially in terms of law, that no one is above the law legally. No one is above the law. And there's even no sacred cow in terms of law. Hence, we have got the separation of powers, which is very imaginary or which is very utopia, that each and every institution plays its role in the advancement of the law. Remember, we have issues pertaining democracy and sovereignty, and the issue of supremacy, that we've got what we call each and every country have got a constitution, which is really the supreme law of that country, and any law, practice, custom, or conduct inconsistent with it shall be treated as invalid to the extent of the inconsistency. Therefore, the obligations imposed by any country's constitutions are binding on every person, natural or jurisdiction, including the state and all executive, legislative, and judicial institutions and agencies of government at every level. It must be fulfilled by every person. So, I'm just saying, the law is a law. It should be conscientized. People should be conscientized in terms of law so that they know what to do when something bad happens within their jurisdiction. So we should ensure that our voice have to be heard from community level, district level, provincial level, until we reach the national level. We can even appeal as a community against judgment which we feel that this judgment is wrong. Then our voices can be heard and rectification should be done. Those are my humble submissions in terms of the question that has been raised. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jim. And Farhia, maybe you've got a last word for us. We are all ears.
Well, I want to thank you all for coming and participating and having a really wholesome discussion about the topic and related topics of governance and leadership, and clan leadership and peacemaking in Africa. So I am humbled to see how many opinions and ideas that's been created by this. Thank you.
Thank you so much indeed, Farhia, for your wonderful presentation. Thank you for your time. I know this also came at short notice. I'm glad that you're able to speak to us so confidently, eloquently, and kindly. And so I thank everybody also for your participation today. I look forward to seeing you all next time on Wednesday. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.